Just say, man, you made this legit. You prepared. You got a background. You got a legit microphone. This isn't like some fly by night podcast anymore.
No, not anymore, man. I'm trying. Like I still got to get rid of some old footage of my poor quality. But
No, man,
oh
that's gold. That's what they show. Of course, that's what Joe Rogan got cut off at keeping the old stuff. So maybe you should go ahead and delete it all. But I mean,
man,
that's just it's nice.
just
You
delete
see kind of
it.
where you started. Yeah, just shh. I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, it's even cadence. I mean, I even like I said, I've noticed even on my traffic stops, you don't realize how fast you talk until it's like reported back to you and how your cadence is and how sometimes you're just not intelligible. I've you know, I was talking on a traffic stop once. And I'm like, man, I can't even understand what I'm saying. It's just because you think you're talking slow, and I've got to consciously sometimes slow down to even like a ridiculous pace in my head just to make it sound normal. And
Right.
I think some people just they don't there's a flow, there's a cadence to talking, there's questions to ask, and I think it's like anything else. Like people I try to do stand up comedy. It's like, oh, my friend's telling me I'm funny. It's like, okay, you might have a couple of zingers you tell at a party,
Yeah.
and then you get a little drunk and you seem funnier than you think you are. But then you
Uh-huh.
get up on stage, you got 30 people, waiting for you to say something funny, and your two jokes bomb, and you got nothing else. Yeah, it's a
You're too
definite skill.
jokes.
So yeah.
They're doing the 5 spot like
Yeah, like
just
that's all I got. It's my time. Thanks.
right,
So
man. Like people,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
people don't realize how much work it is. Like, and that's one of the things that made me appreciate the art more. Like at first, you watch something and it's funny, you laugh, maybe it makes you think a little bit, maybe it ruffles your feathers, whatever. And then you go on about it. But like hearing Rogan and all those old comments talk about the craft, whew, it just makes me like it that much more, you know.
yeah.
Lotion up my arms here. Yeah, man. Now let me talk to the
Get
audience
some
real quick. So yeah, welcome back to What the Frap. I'm your host Jay Zilla as usual. And you see me put my lotion on, so when I talk with my hands, I'm not blinding y'all with the crisp whiteness of my knuckles. Today I
sound
have
like
with
LeBron.
me
Sound like LeBron James.
right the powder thing just
Sorry,
I
go
have
ahead.
with me today Officer Mike Lee. Welcome back to the show, the new and improved What the Frap, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely
Yeah,
improved.
man. So how have you been? Talk to me. How's the family? What's going on? What's changed since the last time we spoke?
Uh, you know, kids are getting older as they tend to do. Um, they get more involved in sports and stuff, and became more independent. So I'm not having to check on them every 2 seconds. Now it's up to like 10. So as long as no one's bleeding or crying, that's usually we've called the day a success. Um, yeah, just doing my thing right now. Like I said, we're still working nights for the department I work for, and it's I enjoy it. And right now, because obviously the kids are still youngish, like the oldest being 12. Um, you know, the night shift and where I'm currently at really is just beneficial for the family. I mean, I'll look to get promoted at some point, but the problem is once you get promoted, then you're kind of how it works. Obviously, with seniority, I can kind of pick my shift because I'm high seniority at the level I'm at. But once you get to the next level, then
Mhm.
you're at the bottom of that level. If that makes
Ah,
sense. So now you're schedule wise, yes, you're getting paid more, but you are bottom of the people of that level picking your schedule. So for me, schedule right now, once the kids kind of are able to, I can go to sleep and or be at work and they can be by themselves at the house for hours at a time without me freaking out. Yeah, I'll probably move on to something different. But right now, this stuff works for me and I enjoy it. I enjoy. I mean, the reason I got into law enforcement in the beginning is just that it's always different. So I hate jobs that are just every day is the same. Just
oh
sit
my
down at
goodness.
your desk, click, click, click. You know, I can't do it anymore. I did it for a long enough time, and it's just nice to be able to, respond to a call or something like that, or, you think it's gonna be a normal day, and then all of a sudden everything just goes haywire, and just breaks up the day, so to speak.
That's crazy. That can happen at a drop of a hat, right? Like I couldn't
Yeah, and
imagine.
like I said, all my crazy instances I could probably tell you about. I mean, shoot, I had two resistings, what we call an RTR. Basically, anytime something goes haywire, something that wasn't supposed to happen happened, where you got to call a supervisor out, they got to do some kind of investigation. Usually, someone's resisting arrest, or there's a car chase or something to that effect. Um, and I had two of those in one weekend, which I hadn't had an RTR in probably before that about 4 or 5 months, and then before that even like 8, 9. So it was just like two in one weekend, and um, as I said, it's just different. You never know. You think, oh, that was a crazy incident. I probably won't have another one again for a couple of months, and it's like, nope, next day. You know, sometimes twice a day. It's yeah. So
So
it's weird.
what's RGR? And look,
Uh,
wait before you answer that, I gotta fix something real quick. I was not able to hear my background music. See, I'm okay with being completely open with just how low brow this is. Boom. Right. So I don't mind stopping it for the people to understand that I'm trying to class this joint up for you people.
yeah,
Right.
this is
I
nice.
want you people to share, like, subscribe, all the things. But I'm trying to class it up a little bit, We got the background, we got the ambiance, we got a smart guy on here. Like it's great. So please, first I want you to
Yeah.
answer, what is RGR? Like, what does that stand for?
It's actually RTR. An RTR is response to resistance. It's a short version of it. And again, that's anything that you know, a normal traffic stop or an arrest is just, all right, sir, put your hands behind your back. You put your hands behind their back. Handcuffs go on. They go to the back seat. Everything works fine. The probably the lowest level, like the first lowest level RTR would be someone just not wanting to get handcuffed, kind of like not fighting you, but not doing what you're asking to do. And it's a gray area. I've been at different locations within the agency where it's like, as long as there's no blood involved, I don't get a straight knee or something, it's not really an RTR. It's fine. Others, it's like if it's any kind of resistance at all, we got to do an RTR. And all an RTR really ends up being is the supervisor comes out, they assess the situation. Is this, is the person who was involved okay? Ambulance, what kind of, if there's an injury, take a picture of it for documentation. They write up something that says, okay, this is basically kind of an independent person that wasn't there, their assessment of what happened. I write up my report, and then it goes up to our boss, and then we have what's called an RTR board, which is a board member of senior staff, who then they look through it and make sure there was no anything that needs to be disciplined or anything to that effect. So violations of policy, violations of constitutional rights, those kind of things. So it's a whole process. It's not fun, because obviously, you don't
elevated
enjoy
situation.
having your stuff. Yeah, because again, a lot of it's opinion. A lot of it is, well, you could have done it this way, or maybe you should have said this instead of this. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe. But it's a lot of ifs and this, and maybe this would have happened, and if you would have tried this, maybe this. It's like, okay, well, a lot of it's conjecture. It's like, well, look, considering the situation, this is the choice I made. If I would have made a different choice, could it have gone differently and maybe better? Sure. Could it have gone worse? Sure. We can't go back in time, try a different scenario. So unfortunately, and it's a little frustrating, because our RTR board is made up of a lot of senior staff who haven't worked the road in about 10, 15 years. So I know I've seen different ways of doing it. I've seen other agencies, they have like a rotating resistance board, where it's like their lower level officers, sergeants who work the road still, they rotate in and they rotate out. And I think that's the best way to do it, just because, one, they have real-time experience, they've worked the road recently, and it keeps them honest, because yeah, you're on the board now, but next week you won't be. You might be the one in front of the firing squad, so to speak. So You
I
know,
like that.
if you're putting out BS, findings like, oh, this person violated policy, you should suspend them for a day or two. It's like, okay, well, next time when you're on the RTR board, we'll use that same logic for you. So it kind of keeps you honest versus someone who has, who's senior staff, who's not going to make a traffic stop ever in the rest of his career. He doesn't have any fear of that, of, his rulings going against him. So they can kind of do whatever they want. So that would be how I would improve it, but they don't generally call me for my opinions. So.
But I like that idea. I mean, it's sort of what government is supposed to be, right? Be careful
Right.
if you have a Republican House and Congress, what you do, because if the vote goes the other way, you can expect that same thing back. I think Republicans are a little bit more gangster and like, nah, we're gonna do what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I think they should have. I mean, I've always been a thing of term limits. I think you want to. I mean, you can debate about how much time you're allowed in Congress, but yeah, I think you make a law, and after your term limit ends in 6 or 12 years, you go back to the civilian world and live within the laws that you just created. Versus you live in Washington D.C., you make your laws that generally apply to everybody else but you, and then you can stay there till you're 85, and you live out the last 2 years of your life back home, which you haven't been in. It's like you really haven't been back home and done those and lived in that area and really lived that life that you're trying to rule on. I mean, it used to be when it started, not to say part-time, but you went, you did it, you served your time and you went home. And I don't understand why, like, you want to be honest. Like, I think it's not like I've ever heard of someone's like, oh, he was a U.S. senator, now he's selling heroin. It's like, they're fine. Like, they're not, if you're a U.S. senator, you're going to go home, you'll be a board member at some company, you'll be a lobbyist, like you're going to be fine. You'll probably make more money outside of Congress.
For sure.
So it's like, I've never personally understood why you want to be 85 and still doing that. But maybe that's why I'm not a congressman, I guess.
But it's the game. It's the game. Like, you wrestled, you played sports in high school, right? Like, if you could still get paid 6 figures, you're getting that for the rest. Like, if you are of the level in Congress, you get your 6-figure payday for the rest of your life. So then it becomes, they're not chasing money necessarily, but the idea of influencing money and like just people, it becomes a different game. If you could play football, I mean, a la Tom Brady, right, till you're 1,000 years old, which I'm pretty sure that's how old he's gonna be when he finally retires. Like, he's gonna outlast football. Like, football is gonna go straight to esports, and then Tom Brady is gonna be number 1 in that. Like, don't get me started.
Yeah, that's honest. It's a different mindset. I mean, I actually, me and my friend were talking about that, about Tom Brady, and I said it's just a different mindset. Like, for me, like, once if I was Tom Brady and I won a Super Bowl, won several, right? And I even said, like, look, I see maybe he wanted to go to a different team and see if he can win somewhere else. And that way it's kind of like, is it Belichick or is it Brady? Who was more important? Obviously with Brady, he went somewhere else and immediately Super Bowl champions. So it's like, there is not one doubter anymore about you are the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, there's no more mountains to climb. There's nothing he's going to do next year that's going to be like, well, yeah, he's even greater than we thought. Like, dude, just take your millions, take your trophies, and enjoy the rest of your life. And that's why I said, I guess that's why I'm not the greatest in anything, because I just don't have that mentality. I want simpler things. Like, I could not imagine doing that. And I said this even, again, talking about politics, about these Supreme Court justices that stay until like they're 85. It's like, why? Like, you're a Supreme Court justice. There's nowhere else to go. You are at the highest level. You're 80. Go enjoy the last 5 years of your life with your family. And go take the time. Go to a beach. They're going to name high schools after you. You're probably the most famous person from your entire neighborhood. You are it. What else is there for you in that arena? and they'll stick around until they literally die in the chair that they're in. Like I don't get it. And
it's a lifestyle. It's hanging on to lifestyle. Like there's a show on Netflix, House of Cards, from the very canceled and should have been canceled.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Oh yeah, I mean, I used to watch that. I watched the first 4 seasons.
So when he's talking about, he's talking about Remy, right? Frank Underwood is talking about Remy directly to the audience, and he says he can't. He had a choice between money and power, and he left for money. So I've got no use for someone like that. Like, that's it, man. That power, the influence, to be able to walk into a restaurant and people go, "Oh, Senator so and so, Representative blah blah blah." There's something that's just intoxicating about that level of power, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is. I mean, there's. I mean, it's prevalent to everything. I mean, there's people. I mean, I know a police officer in our department. He's like the longest serving officer, like, in the history of the state, and I think he's got to be 65, and he's like a road unit. Like, he's not like the colonel or like some guy who's he is out there working the road, and he started when he was 21, like the youngest he could start. So he's been in it for 40 years. I'm like, dude, again, what else is there, man? Just go. You can retire today. You're going to retire with plenty of money. What else is there for you to do? And I guess, I mean, it just comes down to me. I guess in my life, I've always just wanted a family. I want enough money that I can go on a trip, that I don't have to worry if like my car breaks down, that I don't have a car today, or my refrigerator breaks down. Like, once I hit that level, everything else, like, yeah, it's nice. If you hand me $1 million, I'm going to take it. But am I going to, spend every waking moment away from my family to make it? No, what I want is a family. What I want is those things. And, I think some people, I just really, they just lose sight of that. I think we even talked about that last time I would talk to you. I mean, people like Urban Meyer, who they have achieved so much in their professional career, but they left their family behind. It's like, why did you even have a family? Like, it's fine. You don't have to have a family, but if you're going to have a family, you have responsibilities that go with them too. And, yeah, you achieved this greatness, but now your whole family doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah, but they're so malleable. So and if you look at all of the support that his family, right, from his older kids and wife, even with all these allegations and all the stuff that he did, right? You still see an overly supportive family, right? So my thing is, we hear about the crazy man Urban Meyer, how he spends basically 25 hours a day working on football stuff. But who's to say he doesn't have some sort of core time with that family, especially in like seasons and things like that? I mean, they're all throughout history.
I use that example because I saw a documentary just before all this stuff with Jaguars happened.
Oh, okay.
He said his daughter was a Division I college level volleyball player, and he never saw one single game, not one.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's insane to me. Now again, maybe his daughter was fine with that. Maybe they all kind of like knew, like, dad is. I mean, that was back in the 50s, kind of how it was, right? Dad works.
Yeah, he disappears. He comes home to yell at us and eats the biggest piece of chicken and goes to bed.
Right, and like I said, if everybody's cool with that agreement, hey man, that's great. You kind of all found where you want to be. But I don't know. I see a lot, and that's just in this society where I think, prestige and power and money generally is considered like what you need to be achieving. And if you want to spend time with your family, like if your goal is just, hey, look, man, I just want to work. I want to go make my money. I want to leave on time and go spend time with my family. It's like, well, you're lazy, or you're not driven enough. It's like, no, I just know what I want. Like, I want to do my job while I'm here. I agree 9 to 5, and I'm going to work as hard as I can from 9 to 5 for you. That was our agreement.
Right.
And then when I leave, I'm done now. I have why I'm working for you is I'm working so I can spend time with my family. I'm not working for you so that I can, be the best for you forever, like to be the CEO or whatever. Like,
it's definitely not for the money, right?
Right. So it's like but I think that's a lot of times that's seen as, well, you're just not driven enough. Why don't you want more? It's like, why is it not okay to say, I got enough for right now?
Right.
Now if something changes, like get 12 more kids, then yeah, I'll probably need some more to
Like, I
live
have to
that
work more.
lifestyle. Yeah, and different arrangements happen. I mean, people get divorced, especially in law enforcement, happens all the time, and that money changes. Yeah, things change, but I think in general in life, people need to sit down and really think, what do you want? I think people get they're so they don't know why they're unhappy with their life. They're working hard. They're a manager. They're a director of whatever, and they're unhappy. And they don't know why. It's like, because you never wanted to be that. You never wanted to be a director. You wanted to spend time with your family, or vice versa. Maybe you never wanted a family, and your wife is just constantly yelling at you. You're never home. You're not spending time with the kids. You never wanted kids. Why did you have them? Like,
because you
so
were
if you never want
told
to have
to.
kids, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's like we are all told, society, not only do you have to have a family, but you also have to be, again, to strive and work 80 hours a week if your boss tells you to. It's like, those aren't compatible. And so you have to find a balance. You have to work it out with your family and say, look, if I'm Urban Meyer, like, look, I want to be the greatest football coach of all time. I'm going to be gone all the time. Like, you're probably going to see me an hour a week. If you're okay with that, let's do this. If you're not okay with that, we can't do this. But I don't know. I
Maybe
think
he has
why a
that
lot of
support,
times,
but I want to say, I feel like maybe he's the type of guy who, like, he's better off loving from a distance. When he's here, he's a madman. I coached high school sports. I think we talked about this last time, and was like yelling at kids about plays in my sleep. Like, I can't imagine what he does on his level, right? Like, it's probably best, like, go keep making this money, keep moving us to beautiful places, giving us experiences, and we'll value that over actual time with you. It's all about who you value. But I mean, what do you do when you're sold the American dream, right? If you work hard, you can afford a really nice house with a white picket fence, a couple of cars, and 3 kids, right? And that was the dream for a long time. And then something started to shift in the 80s. Responsibility.
Yeah.
Like we talked about before, these guys, like the ultra rich, were paying near 90% taxes, which sounds crazy, because I mean, that's before you take all the philanthropy stuff. I'm watching a show on HBO right now, The Gilded Age, I think. Really good, where they talk about how it was this competition to see who can give the most, right? I mean, that was just the way of old society. But there was a huge switch in the 80s where they were just like, well, what if we just pay less in taxes, right? But we keep ramping up production and cost of living, and then so that's what happened.
Yeah, there's a dynamic structure that's changed. I think, again, the old business model of you get married, dad goes to work. Even if you're working a job that doesn't require a college education, you're getting middle class wages. You can afford a house. It's not a big house. It's a house that can field your, sometimes, I mean, especially a big Catholic family like my dad was, 9 kids. Mom stays at home. That system works as long as there are middle class jobs available for people who that get the minimum amount of education. As long as that's the case, that system works, and that the females don't mind staying at home and being the moms. That system works. Now, when those jobs that don't require college education do not support a family on its own, then mom has to go to work. She can't just be the homemaker. So now you have 2 people leaving to work. So now you need childcare, which is astronomical. You got to pay for that.
It's so much.
And then, especially just the cost of everything. I mean, now you got to go to college. Well, student loans cost. Back in the day, you could go to college for a couple of $1,000s. It was manageable. Now it's tens of thousands of dollars. So now you're going to have student debt just to get a taste of what a middle class life is. Probably both of you.
Yep.
And then so you're working on those. Now you got, again, even cost of just everyday life. Internet connection. You didn't have an internet connection. You didn't have a Time Warner cable bill. in the 50s.
Right.
You know, you had an AT&T bill that was probably just your landline. Now you got 2 cell phone lines. You've got not just your electric, water, and gas. You've got internet. You've got cell phone bills. You've got student debt. I mean, those are all costs that didn't exist 70 years ago. So now, and again, you're fighting with 2 jobs that used to equal what 1 job was in the 50s. And you need a college education just to get that. So, yeah, and I think we're still trying to figure out how to make that work. And honestly, it's not sustainable as a business model, in my eye. And I don't I I don't know how you would fix it. You know, again, I'm obviously on the more liberal side. I think we can start doing, universal health care. I mean, that number one alone is huge. I think we need to start making the bachelor's degree programs like public schools, like the inflation. If you need a bachelor's degree to get a job that you used to be able to get 50 years ago with a high school degree, then that needs to be part of the high school program. High school needs to be 2 years longer, or whatever it is. That so when you walk out in public education, you can have a reasonable shot at a middle class, normal life. That's just not the case anymore. And so we basically privatized all that. So you're on your own, and if you get the basics education, you're not going to make it. And so good luck, unless you have an app or something that, or you buy Bitcoin at the right time. But outside of that, yeah, it's not a sustainable thing. And I think it's being sold as that. It's like, well, it's a you problem. You're not working hard enough. I get mad at my parents, especially the baby boomers of the world. They're always like, back when I was, your age. I'm like, yeah, back when you were my age, again, you could walk down to the steel mill down the street. If you didn't feel like going to college, walk down the steel mill. You had a union job with a pension, and you could work and then have a job and have 3 kids and support your wife who didn't have to work. You didn't have to go to college. And if you did go to college, you were guaranteed a job, guaranteed a manager job with your liberal arts degree that meant nothing, and you had to pay $5,000 for it. So, that stuff always drives me through the wall. It's like, well, it's just this generation is just lazy. It's like, it's a different generation. You can't. Why don't you want to move? Why don't you want to move out at 18? It's like they can't. You can't buy it. You can't. They would love to not live with their parents. I can't think of one person who is happy to stay living at their parents' house after they're 18.
Your niece.
Not.
Like, afford me all of the the adult allowances, right? And pay for some stuff for me, right? But yeah, she will live here until she dies.
I bet you, if she was guaranteed a middle class job, like she could make $70,000 a year at a job, and it's like immediately, she would love to have her own apartment and be able to get her own stuff. Like, it's just that's not a reality.
You are underestimating how cool we are, Mike.
That's true.
You're missing that.
I've had friends who've done this. Like, they have that job and they still stay at home because their parents are cool with it. Now, if you could do that and work out that deal and make $70,000 and you can bank that money, all the more power to you. We used to make fun of I had a friend like that we made fun of all the time because he was voluntarily staying at home. He had a nice job. He's like, but he banked like $300,000 and walked out, when he was 26, of that house with $300,000 in his pocket. I'm like, yeah, who's an idiot? I mean, I was,
Right. But so there it is, though. The idea of the story. You say, why not extend high school 2 years? I'm sure people are going to hear this and be like, oh, what? No, high school is exactly 4 years here in America. There's a freshman, there's a sophomore, junior, senior. You know what I mean? We cling to our traditions so hard. I mean, look at baseball. They have declined numbers-wise in the last, I think, 10 years every year. But they are saying, nope, we are tradition and we are this level, even though football and basketball is passed them by. Like, just,
that's,
that unwillingness to change the story because we are so enraptured with stories. The ideal of in the 80s, we're gonna stop crime. You know how we do this? We're gonna have a war on drugs. Right? the DARE
Yeah,
programs, all these things that are created by big tobacco and alcohol companies. Like, I didn't even know DARE had that connection. But that's crazy.
Yeah,
Like, they were like, we don't want people smoking this or making items out of hemp, the paper people say, right? Like, it's a whole hierarchy out there that we are not even aware of. All we see is, hey, we're trying to keep drugs out of kids' hands. And then everybody can applaud and get on board with that without looking at to the details and what that actually means.
Right. I mean, it's a human condition, right? We look back on our own lives with rose-colored glasses. We think, you know, and I actually listened to another person, he's I think a philosophy professor, Jonathan Haidt. He said something. It really stuck with me. It was like last week, where it's like we have our own press secretaries in our head, right? We make decisions, and then we have our press secretary justify it, right? And that's the same, and it's just done at scale for people, politicians, and generations, right? Hey, the reason I succeeded, right? The reason I have a house and I live a middle class life, because I worked hard. I worked harder than you. I was out there, hustling. I worked, I worked 80 hours a week, and that's why, and they don't see, yes, you worked 80 hours a week, and that, I guarantee you worked hard, and you came home and your hands were calloused from the steel mill. I guarantee you that was the case. But you had access to that steel mill job at middle class wages. That is not true for the person working at Amazon's fulfillment center today. You're not going to make that kind of money at Amazon fulfillment center, and it's not union, and there's no pension. And so even if they offer you a 401k, you're having to take money out of your meager paycheck to contribute to that. And that's all dependent on the stock market. If you walk out and the stock market collapses, you just lost half your money. A pension's guaranteed. It's not, the company guarantees X amount of dollars regardless of how the stock market does, and they have to make up the difference. So the onus on your retirement is on the company. That is completely wiped away. So that's how that rose-colored glasses thing works. It's the reason I have succeeded because of my hard work. And if you're not succeeding, it's because you're not working as hard as me. And that it makes it simple, right? Because then when you think of it that way, especially from a societal standpoint, I don't have to make any changes, right? If it's you're failing because of you, right? Your poor work ethic, then there's nothing I have to do to change that, right? If it's a societal issue where everybody's failing, it's a downslope. Well, now it's a society that we need to address it. There's a problem that we need to address and have some hard conversations about. And nobody wants to do that. It's much easier to blame, you didn't do this.
Right,
you are lazy. You're right. You did this. And that way, hey man, sorry about your luck, And that's, I hate that mentality. I mean, I hate that mentality in any leadership. You should always, as a leader, whether you're a senator or a mayor, or you're the manager at McDonald's, if somebody failed, you always need to look at yourself first. Did I do something? It's just something I could have done to stop this person from failing. And yeah, sometimes it's something you could have done, but that always should be the first question. Why are people leaving? Why are people quitting? Why are all my employees on food stamps that can barely make it? All my employees are late because they have childcare issues. Well, maybe it's because you're not paying them enough, and they have to try to figure out how to get their kids to X place so they can work for you. But nope, they're lazy. Let's just fire them because they showed up late to work twice. And rule is 2 times you're done. I'm like, this is happening too much. And so always look inward first as a supervisor, as a leader. But that's difficult because then you might find out that maybe it's something you did do or didn't do, and there's fault there. And nobody wants to do that. It's hard. It is. Nobody wants to kind of be introspective. It's much easier to say, I'm where I am because of 100% me, and everybody else. You're on the street, maybe don't suck next time.
Do better at not sucking, right? Like the lone person yelling at Osaka, right? You suck, and she breaks down in tears. It's like, what are we doing here? But I love how that covers such a broad group of people, right? The ideal of it's not your fault, it's the other's fault. Because if you make a lot of money and you spend a lot of time working, that does justify you not doing much to help. right? Why should I pay more taxes? Those poor souls should work themselves to the bone and get to where I am, right? But on the flip side, if I'm not working, right, and my life is in disarray, I can look to my politicians who are telling me, well, it's the Mexicans who are jumping the border and they're taking your jobs. It's like, see, it's not that I suck. They're stealing my jobs. Vote for him. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting how stories just really do affect us, and it has since we started, first started writing things down, right? And so I bring up the DARE program and all of that because I figured you're Officer Mike, right, Lee, but you don't really see the CO side of things, right? All the prison stuff. But I was looking at that, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. The idea of like how much money goes towards like maybe a lawsuit to settle some suit instead of training, right? But then that took me down another rabbit hole of, well, how do officers get paid? So Officer Lee, how do officers get paid?
Well, that depends on the agency. So in most states, you have some version of state police. So you'll have a state highway patrol or state police force in some form or fashion. And they are paid either by some, the general funds. So, some whatever you pay in state taxes. Mm-hmm. Some are paid by registration fees exclusively. Some get a cut of traffic tickets. It's usually small, if any. And then there's kind of a county. Most places have county sheriffs. And so step back, like state police generally, like their chief or their colonel or whatever their top spot is, that top cop there is usually appointed by the governor. So a lot of that is state money. However, and again, it depends on the state. General fund, sometimes registration fees, depending on how it works. And then there's next level, which would be deputies, which are like run by a county sheriff. They're elected by you by the at election time as a sheriff. And again, there's county. There are county taxes that you pay into county trustees, and they generally get paid through that. Sometimes tickets usually go into like a general fund as well for the counties and state. Okay. So that money goes into a general fund for everything, and then they disperse it out as needed. And then there's local PDs, which are like your city cops, LA, Chicago PD, those kind of places. And again, those are paid. Usually, those are more directly like city taxes. There's not usually some different venue for it. So, again, usually it's a general fund, and then these places usually kind of have to decide how much they're going to put into public safety. It's usually a Department of Public Safety, city, whatever, and then they disperse that through, however they decide they want to disperse that money.
Right. So then that got me thinking about, that led me, so I do sort of a Wikipedia thing, right? I started thinking about one thing and then, but what about this? And then I'm off on another tangent over here and so on and so forth. And so I got all the way down to really trying to understand the differences between private prisons or for-profit prisons and public prisons, right? And I didn't even realize, for me, all of these problems keep intersecting at one time period, right? Which are the 80s, the beloved Reagan. Yeah. And that hard crackdown on so many things that affected, whether purposefully or not, I'm not here to debate that, but looking at the numbers, it affects a specific group of people, right? And when I look at that, like just in the state of Georgia, right, per capita, Forsyth County, right, has a median, just looking at this number makes me shudder a little bit. A median per capita, right, as far as salaries, is a little over $100,000, right? That's the median. Now on the other side of Georgia, down there in Wheeler,
for a police officer or for a CO?
No. This is just period. Like this is anybody who does anything in that county. Yeah, that's the 14th richest county in the country. So this has nothing to do with policing or prisons or anything like that. So over 100,000. Now the lowest in Georgia is Wheeler County, which for them the per capita personal income is about 21,000. All right, so that's kind of the disparity. And of course, Forsyth is up, northern Georgia. Southern Georgia is where Wheeler County is. Excuse me, but so those are the types of things that we look at when we look at as far as how policing is done, how is it paid for, how the prisons paid for. Now, the private prisons, right, the for-profit prisons are usually housed in these same areas, the low-income areas, right? There's usually less food, less education. There's usually less, what was it? Just everything, right? Across the board. You talk about healthcare, all of these things are all intersecting at that. Black people make up less than 25% of the population, but we account for most of the abortions. Little things like this, right? So it's, the black and brown communities, the lower income communities, however you want to look at it, are suffering a slew of issues. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how did prisons even come into to being, right? The for profit. And it literally was after the 80s, there was a huge boom and the prisons were overfilled. And then so corporations were like, hey, hire us to do it and we'll take care of it. It'll save you money. We'll be humane and we'll be able to house, the overflow of prisons. Despite the incarceration rates not being cuffed with crime rates, right? The idea that, hey, the more prisoners we put in, the cleaner the streets are and crime should go down. And nope, doesn't happen like that. So how they're able to justify it, and it all goes back to, corporations, which the numbers show it doesn't save us money, right? And then they make all these crazy rules and laws that they kind of put a quota on these places. Like I can't remember which prison it was, but it was a for-profit prison, and literally they because they didn't have, I guess, a 96 or 97 occupancy rate. I don't know what it's called, right? They had like 3 to 4% that was free. They had to pay, the state had to pay money to compensate them. Now, where's the state getting the money? From the taxpayers. So it's not helping and it's costing us money. Like, so how do we get rid of these things?
Well,
I know that's a lot.
I think the main, no, it's fine. Oh, the main problem as I see it is, I think, well, for one, how we got to private prisons is something that happens a lot in government, where the idea that the private sector always does it better is what happens normally is that these lobbyists and stuff underfund the prisons. They start by underfunding them. Like you have an influx of prisoners. You change the laws. You up the mandatory minimums. So now we're going to have an influx, and you didn't give us the funds to do that. And so they say, well, these prisons are failing. They're not providing the service. Well, you didn't increase the funds. You gave us more business, and then you didn't increase the funds. So then the private companies come in and say, hey, these guys aren't doing it, right? So we need to come in and fix this for you. And ultimately, they don't do a much better job, if at all. I'm sure, like anything else, there are examples of better and examples of worse. But in the end, they aren't providing any better service. They're generally, again, what they do is they hire corrections officers, again, with lower wages, no pensions, basically part-time. So they take the money from the people who are the COs that normally, again, if you were public employees, would have pensions, would have health care, would have higher wages but required. So that's how they suck that money out. And then they double and triple up on the prisons. So they say that the public sector is failing by setting them up to fail, and then saying that they're going to be the heroes to come in and save them. And then, so once that happens, and then a lot of times they lobby and they write their own rules. So they make that rule, like, if you're not if we have 3% unoccupied, you got to pay us this money.
Right.
And again,
the state, which means the taxpayers.
Right. And so again, but it goes to the lobbying. It goes to, like, these companies lobby and give money to the people who make these decisions. When you put money into it and say, and a lot of times, again, when you see, if you ever read a bill that are written for any of these companies, a lot of times the companies themselves write them for the politicians, and then they just put their names on it.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
It's
hey,
something Bernie
this is
Sanders
how we
talked
want it
about
worded.
often, which is why he was very
Right.
he wasn't promoted as highly as some of the other candidates.
Right. That's normally how it's done, because they have the lawyers and stuff to write it the exact way it needs to be written, so that they always are going to make the money. So the only way, again, to fix that issue, obviously, one, we just need to reduce the prison population of nonviolent offenders. Like we're starting to, we've made some improvements. I think it's actually one of the very few bipartisan things I've seen in recent time, where it's reforming criminal justice. There's been a couple of things that have
Decriminalizing a lot
been
of
done well.
things. Yeah.
Right. And I think that will help stopping the mandatory minimums, letting judges make those decisions, and then holding them accountable. If they let some 5-time rapist out the street with, a 6-month sentence, then yeah, you should hold them accountable. And like, that ain't right. That's
Right.
why they're elected most of the time. But yeah, they need to be able to take into account things and try to keep people out of prison as much as possible, and leave it to the violent offenders who can't be held out in society. If you restrict it to that, you can reduce it. And then again, okay, this is.
I don't want to see your arms.
Hello, buddy. Take everybody out. Close the door.
Bye,
Take the dog out.
kids. See, we're not live.
So-
it's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the way I see it. You gotta, I mean, at the base level, you gotta get money out of politics. Until you do that, a lot of this stuff is nice in theory.
Mhm.
But they will always, these private companies will always lobby. They will always say, if you try to close a private prison, you're going to lose jobs.
Right.
This is going to wreck your, and they have the money and the time to do it. So until the money incentive is no longer there, and you can run these things properly, none of that's going to change. And then once you get that done, then you can start working on the hard work of actually making a working prison system
Mhm.
that does the job correctly. But that's what I said before. It's like, we always are trying to chip away at the top parts, but it's always about incentives. The incentives are wrong for the people who make decisions, the people who allocate our money as taxpayers to people. They don't care about what you or I have to say in a general sense, because I don't contribute to their campaign, and they can't run a campaign without money. And it's not even really their fault. They're playing the game too. They have to. They don't want to be on a phone begging for dollars, I'm sure.
Right.
But they have to. That's the game it's played. So until that changes, everything else is wishful thinking at best, in my opinion.
So I feel like you're not going to get money out, but what you can do is look at the two extremes that I love looking at, right? On the left side, the extreme was the entire DNC decided beforehand that Hillary Clinton is going to be president. And then along comes this guy with a story and how he speaks. And he's like upbeat, he's a little younger, like something about this fella, right? And DNC is still like, nope. They're blocking ads, they're blocking all of his requests for funds for promoting himself. All that. Same thing they did with Bernie Sanders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but his popularity and his fundraising swelled to such a ridiculous amount of money on his own that they had to kind of bring him in and give him a fair shake, and then he becomes a 2-term president. There, one young Barack Obama. The other extreme is Trump. They laughed at Trump. The RNC did. Yeah, this is great buzz, but have your fun, Donald, and then get the crap on out of my face. But again, he had a story too. It was a darker story. But he was hitting all the notes. It's not your fault, it's their fault, right? He was like, a dumb Hitler. You know what I mean? They're taking your jobs. Hey, rich people, they're taking your taxes. Hey, I got all of you, right? While telling poor people, and I'm gonna bring back coal and all these fantastical things that never happened, right? In the 4 years he was there.
Right.
So I'm looking at those two examples, and I'm just thinking, man, you can dress us up, you can add technology, you can add Twitter and all these things, But deep down, it really does come to who's the better storyteller, right? That's Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren with their facts, and Marco Rubio and Huckabee with their facts. Get them out of here. I don't want it. The right didn't want it. The left doesn't want it, right? Give me that guy who's talking crap and saying all the things I want to hear, right? Give me that guy who makes me believe in me and want for change, you know? It's incredible.
Right. And that works. I mean, I'm sure you have examples. I mean, especially at presidency, where people they tune in for that, the horse race, the presidency. So people do vote on higher levels for president. But how the sausage is made, I mean, I think you talk about Barack Obama or even Donald Trump. They say a lot of things like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Why can't they? It's because there's a whole bunch of other people that are paid off. So even if you could get a completely politician who came out of nowhere, is a billionaire, doesn't speak to any of the other interests, he can only do so much because he's got to get Congress involved, and they have their own incentives, and most of them have incentives that don't align. I mean, again, we can talk about the great stories. You can talk about the Barack Obamas that came out of nowhere, the Ocasio-Cortezes, and Republicans have a few of that, like the Mike Lees from Utah. They came out of nowhere. A guy who beat Eric Cantor, who was a high-level Republican. Yes, those stories exist, but those are literally 5 stories.
Yeah, those outliers, right. Well, that's what I said. Oftentimes, if you look at the extremes, though, it gives you insight, right? Because the only real way to change this is that people, as a whole, get educated. Like going all the way back to medieval times, right? The biggest thing I can do is to keep my constituents as dumb as possible and as busy with their jobs as possible, right? And then if that's not enough, I got to make them squabble with each other on a local level. And then I got to squabble with other countries to make ourselves look good. Like all these different distractions, right? And it wasn't until when the Moors were at their doorsteps, right? When their thoughts was from everybody, I don't care how poor you are, I don't care what gender you are, you will know how to read, you will understand the scientific method, you will know how to, do all these things, right? You're going to be educated. And it really, it made a more fair society. Like even in ancient Egypt, my wife and I stumbled upon this because we were trying to figure out, like, when did this hierarchy thing happen? What happened with this patriarchal stuff? Like, when did that come into play? And ancient Egypt, it was men and women working together. Women owned businesses. Women were able to get divorces if they didn't like their husbands. It was a more cohesive unit, until some colony brethren who was like, no, don't let the women read. Don't let the kids read either. Put them all in the fields or put them in the kitchens. Men are more important than women, so on and so forth. And that's how you build a sophisticated society, right? Look at our clothes. Yeah. Look at my powdered wig that's hiding my syphilis. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Look that up. The reason they wore powdered wigs was because they were riddled with syphilis. And because the rich did it, everyone else started doing it to try to make themselves look a certain way. Hence why you have some countries who still practice that. Nuts.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all a story. Yeah. Just good stories.
Or they're full of syphilis and still. So maybe they still have a syphilis problem.
Or that, right. But nobody can tell these days.
Yeah, nobody can tell. I mean, yes. As a general thing, I would say yes. Education is important. I mean, yeah. If you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you don't know the system, I've definitely, if I again was king of the world and I make choices, I think civics is definitely undertaught. I've advocated, and I think actually I've seen some in my state that actually tried to do this with requirement. It's like there's some basic, life stuff. It's like I took British literature as a requirement in my senior year of high school. Wow. Now I couldn't even tell you a single book that I had to read, but I never, not once, had a class on credit card interest, compounding interest. And yes, we had a math class, but we never really focused on how to handle a 401k, what to do. These are things that I don't care if you're a janitor or you're the CEO of a company, you are going to have to deal with student loan debt, compounding interest,
Right.
how paying a minimum on a credit card, how that affects you over time, how credit scores work.
Mm-hmm.
It boggles my mind the things that we all deal with that is not even taught as a basic. Instead of, I mean, again, British literature is great. You know, I don't see it didn't harm me in any way. But if you had to make a choice, you have limited time, and you are going to skip how to handle a credit card or British literature, you know, civics, again, we all should vote. We all have the ability to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is that not top priority? And then everything else, yes, if I got to learn calculus, great. That's not important, but
right.
we have limited time with the kids. And if you're not going to extend high school 2 more years, then you got to make choices. And I question the choices sometimes that we're like you said before, we're stuck in the 1950s in education when we were number one, you know, and that was great when we were number one, but most of that is because of World War II, and you know, every place that we compete with now was bombed, in the Stone Age, so that helps to be number one when nobody else is competing.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said that before. It's like, well, back they always say the golden age is the 1950s, and it's like, well, that's when, again, we were just better. I'm like, well, we were better because if you think about everybody we compete with now, China, bombed by Japan, bombed by us, England, bombed by Germany, bombed by us. You know, they were all, France, bombed by Germany, all recovered. All these major first world countries were literally recovering buildings. They had no education system. And so, yeah, we were fine, and we were able to capitalize on that. And we've been riding the coattails for a long time. And it's starting to catch its age. Yeah,
we've been riding the story.
So, right, that's a story of like that. It's because of our ingenuity. It's like, well, yes, but no, it's not that, but it's also because, you know, you're going to win a race if nobody else is running. You know, or if everybody's got broken legs.
Nobody also wants to look at some of the harder realities, right? The more harsh realities. Like, how does a teenager or toddler country surpass, you know, Spain, Britain, and all these great countries that have been established for centuries, right? Well, it's unpaid labor and unlimited natural resources. Like that, I mean, that's the secret to American greatness. Like, if I start a company right now with my kids and I don't pay my kids, I'm gonna do a lot better with somebody who is paying their workforce, right? So that's a huge part of it. But then on the flip side, now I need you guys not to know your own history, right? I need, you know, poor, black, brown, white, whoever. I need you poor to be in the fields working hard and not paying attention to this stuff, right? There's a reason why we barely ever crack 50% in voting turnout, because a lot of it is voter suppression, which is why it's so frustrating for me when I hear somebody not voting. It's like, well, why are you not voting? Well, because how hard they make it. Don't you think they're making it that hard because it's something worthwhile past all those blockades? Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, there are a lot of things I don't agree with, but it's not going to change unless you change it, you know? So I don't know, man. And it all goes back to this ideal of we're just getting too top heavy. So what's happening? We're getting way too top heavy. The rich are finding every way possible not to pay taxes. So you leave it to we little people who can't afford to pay, you know, that much in tax, right? Looking at those numbers I talked about before, the richer the neighborhood, the better the healthcare, the education, the policing, the jail systems, right? Their laws, because they understand that, you know, we can complain about compounding interest and all these things not being a part of the curriculum, but we parents are the ones who set the curriculum based on who we vote for. And we're just not exercising that muscle as much as we need to. But look, I'm keeping you way past your time. Like, last words, anything to promote? I know I'm gonna throw a video on here, very ghetto-like, but we'll kind of we'll talk through that.
I mean, nothing to promote. I definitely don't have a podcast or anything.
Yet, I'm gonna work on that.
Promote on my end. Yeah, well, like I said, maybe I do have a podcast. I am Officer Norman. I don't know, but no. I mean, I guess I'll speak to your last point to put a finer point on it. Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to. I think a lot of times the poor white Republicans in Iowa and West Virginia have so much more in common with the poor folks in Atlanta and black people in Chicago than more than they have apart. I mean, it's that's the part that's crazy to me, is that they seem like they're on opposite ends of the political spectrum. But I'm like, if you put on a list of all the things that are problems in your life, yes, there are going to be a few. You know, skin color issues are going to be one of them. But the big things, finding a good job, childcare, healthcare, the things that really impact your life day in and day out that you struggle with, that really are just everything to you, like that affects West Virginia, the poor West Virginia, poor Ohio, poor New Mexico, poor Georgia. And it seems like, but one's Republican, conservative, one's Democrat, liberal, and neither the two shall come together. And I'm like, if Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter could come together as a voting bloc because they have much of the same issues, yeah, then you can't. I mean, take a page out of the Tea Party. You know, they were a small group, and now they have people with I'm a Tea Party Republican. There is not one, I'm a Black Lives Matter congressperson. I am a Occupy Wall Street senator. And if you can do that, I think that's connect those two together, educate, like you were saying, and then you can challenge. But as long as, again, the powerful and keep us separated and uneducated, that's the change ain't gonna happen.
Man, that's it. Officer Mike Lee. Actually, one more thing before you go, because what you're speaking to is values, right? You know, we got to sit down and just take a deep breath and figure out what we are going to decide to value. You know, a lot of times you hear people's values and they don't match up with what they're actually doing. You know, I know I've been guilty of that myself. Like, I value a healthy body and being able to walk upstairs without breathing hard, but I have not put down the Twinkies and the Doritos. You know, so what I'm doing in actuality is valuing those sweet, delicious carbs and sugar over my own health. You know, I was talking to my wife about a stat that just blew my mind, man. So I think it's like somewhere between 80 to 90% of people who are prescribed medications for whatever reason don't take them properly, right? About half of those people never even get them prescribed. So imagine, I've got a pain in my side. I go see somebody. They tell you, oh, we know what the problem is. Here's a piece of paper. Take this and you'll feel better in a month. And then people don't even take the paper in. Right? That's the mindset that we're dealing with here. Right? What do we value? You value time. Some people value money. Right? People who value money, they're going to get validated. But that's a never-ending hunger. Right? Whereas you value time with your family, so you're going to have more moments like this.
Keep working, Mace. Bring him back down. Bring him back down, buddy. There you go. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Keep working. Keep working. Keep working. There you go. Half now. Half now.
Probably the cameraman.
Keep working, Mason. Get that half in. On the right. Half on the right. Half on the right. Half on the right, Mace.
Oh, that other guy is struggling.
Yeah.
There you go. Grab that. Grab it.
Stand up. I can't.
Keep fighting, Mason. Good job, buddy. Don't quit.
Still doesn't listen to me. So
there you go. Work that half in now.
There it is. Keep working. Boom.
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, I think just in happier terms. I mean, a lot of people just suffer from unhappiness no matter where they at, and you just got to sit down and it's just being honest with yourself. What do I want out of this life that I have? And then, you know, I tell everybody between the difference between wishing and wanting. Wishing, we all wish. You know, I wish I had 6-pack abs again. I wish I had $1 billion. Okay. I mean, yeah, if you want to have 6-pack abs, and said, okay, look, you have to give up carbs. You're going to have to exercise another hour a day. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Okay, well then you wish you had six-pack abs. If you want six-pack abs, you will do those things. And there's nothing wrong with wishing for things. But if you're saying you want something and you don't want to do the things required to do it, then you just wish, and you got to be honest with yourself. And that's about priorities. Like you said, values. What do I value? What do I want? If you want to be the CEO of the company you work for, well, you're probably going to have to work a lot of hours and not get paid. Stay after when nobody else is there. Sacrifice with your family. And that's giving yourself the best chance to do that. And if that's what you want. If that's not what you want, if you just want to spend time with your family and you're still working 80 hours, what are you doing? You're doing the opposite of what you really want in your life. And I think a lot of people, again, we all do it in some form. We all struggle with that, and it's hard. And we all just need to be honest with ourselves and what we want, and go for it, and do what's required.
That's it, man. Well, look, I feel a little bit safer knowing you out there in the world. We need more people like you. Officer Mike Lee, thanks so much for joining us. You're gonna have to come back, man.
You know where I'm at.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.